They've got more than 1 million members around the world, but for some, the Muslim Brotherhood are simply terrorists. And that includes the United States. Washington has announced plans it wants to designate the group as a foreign terrorist organization. The decision was announced after a meeting between President Donald Trump and his Egyptian counterpart at the White House. It's a huge win for President Sisi, one of the group's most vociferous critics. But many are asking if the Muslim Brotherhood actually poses a threat. For more, here's Haider Abbasi.
It was a peaceful protest that ended in horror. 6 years ago, Egypt's security forces broke up a sit-in rally. In a matter of hours, at least 800 people were dead. The protesters were supporters of Mohamed Morsi, Egypt's first democratically elected leader. Just a few weeks earlier, he had been removed from office in a military coup. Morsi is also a member of the now outlawed Muslim Brotherhood. But it seems banning the Brotherhood in Egypt isn't enough. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has urged the United States to put the movement on its terror list. And now the White House is trying to do just that. But is the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization? Founded in 1928 by Hassan al-Banna in Cairo, the Muslim Brotherhood is one of the oldest Islamic movements in the world. It combines charity work with political activism. Although members did carry out attacks early on, the group officially renounced violence in 1978. Since its formation, the Muslim Brotherhood spread rapidly across Egypt and beyond. Political parties linked to or influenced by the group are found across the Arab world, from Morocco to Iraq. And this is just one of the problems for the US. If the White House sanctions the Brotherhood, it will strain relations with several Arab countries where the movement is politically active. The designation could also worsen ties with Turkey, which supports the movement. The Muslim Brotherhood is not only banned as a terrorist group in Egypt, but also in Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. It's also the reason why some Arab nations cut ties with Qatar, which backs the group. However, if the Trump administration were to classify the Brotherhood a terrorist organization, it would not only appease Egypt, but also play well with its supporters, many of whom are suspicious of Islam and Muslims. So could the sanctioning of the Muslim Brotherhood worsen US relations in the Middle East? And could banning the group encourage more violent Islamic movements? Haider Abbasi, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now in the studio is Ashraf Abdelghaffar. He's a senior leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. In Washington, D.C. is Matthew Brodsky. He's a Middle East analyst and senior fellow at the Security Studies Group. And in Hanover, New Hampshire is Daniel Benjamin, a former counter-terrorism advisor at the U.S. State Department between 2009 and 2012. Gentlemen, good to have you on the Newsmakers. Ashraf Abdelghaffar, so the White House wants to issue that order to list the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. That would make you a terrorist. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel sorry, but this is, again, it's a bad way to manipulate the conditions all over the world, as Mr. Trump doing all the time. Now, what he gained from getting this decision that Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist? Muslim Brotherhood are present since 90 years all over more than 80 countries, and some of them in the power now, like Morocco, for example, or in many places, and even in Egypt. Muslim Brotherhood came to the power by election, a very good election, and Abdel Fattah al-Sisi make a coup against them. And Mr. Trump saying about Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is a killer man, okay? And this is Abdel Fattah al-Sisi who's asked Mr. President Trump that I need Muslim Brotherhood.
From the US perspective, right, if they look at a group such as Hamas, for example, they consider Hamas a terrorist organization, and they say, well, why not go after the organization that is the root or the source of Hamas and predates a lot of these organizations that come from it? They're trying to go a step further. How would you respond to that?
I consider it's nothing.
Why is it nothing?
Yeah. What shall he do?
Let me ask you directly. Is the Muslim Brotherhood, for those who don't know, is it involved directly in terrorism at all?
Where? You have to give an incident, and you have to give an evidence. Where?
Okay.
I'm asking where.
Okay. Daniel Benjamin, right? There's an idea that perhaps just like the Qatar blockade, some believe that the Trump administration is being played a little bit by the Egyptians, by the Emiratis, by the Saudis. They're taking out their own enemies by convincing Trump that these are the bad guys. Are you partial to that?
I think that's a good part of the explanation. I think the president has what one diplomat has called autocrat envy, and he's drawn to those autocrats and he wants to make them happy. And I don't think he has any idea about the legal restrictions on designation that make the Muslim Brotherhood an inappropriate subject for designation. But there's no question that he does want to make those autocrats happy. He also wants to make his own base happy, and there's a strong Islamophobic streak among his core supporters, and he sees some political value in this designation in that regard.
Daniel, I understand that you've actually looked into this. What are the legal restrictions in a nutshell?
Well, I used to run the counter-terrorism bureau at the State Department, and one of our jobs was preparing designation packages. To be designated a foreign terrorist organization, you would have to first of all prove that the Muslim Brotherhood is a unitary organization. The Muslim Brotherhood, globally speaking, is not a unitary organization. There's no one command and control. And so from that perspective, it can't be done. The other thing that is critically important is that the group has to show a pattern of threatened or actual terrorist violence. The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, which seems to be the focus of Trump's attention, has not been involved in violence and has officially forsworn violence for at least 35 or 40 years. And so the fundamental basis for a designation is missing.
Matthew Brodsky, Daniel says there's no case to list them as a terrorist organization under the FTO. I'm guessing you disagree.
Well, I think the United States has a system of laws, and as Daniel just pointed out, there's a process that this goes through in order for it to happen. Of course, it also has to, aside from having Treasury Department and the State Department or Secretary of State sign off on this, then there'll be time for Congress to weigh in on that. And so I think the bottom line is that we know that the Muslim Brotherhood is basically wants a global caliphate and to impose Sharia law, is opposed to Western values and democracy as such. And we know that it is the glue for the ideology and the action of Sunni Islamist terrorist groups throughout the world today. So it's obviously helps fundraise as well for groups such as Hamas, as we saw with the Holy Land Foundation in the U.S.
Hold on, let's take what you said, because we have the privilege of having somebody from the organization here. So let me ask Ashraf Abdelghaffar. So we heard from Matthew. He says it's clear that the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan, want a global caliphate or khilafah, and they want everybody to be under Sharia law. Is that true?
Who says that?
Matthew Brodsky just
said
it.
He can say whatever he wants. Why? Because this khilafah, what does it mean khilafah, even if Muslim Brotherhood decide to make the Muslim world, Sunni Muslim world as a khilafah? Khilafah is a kind of union like European Union like Soviet Union.
I mean, people think khilafah, they think Baghdad is ISIS, right?
No. This Baghdadi has been made from the Americans, and they know that. ISIS.
What do you mean?
ISIS is made by Americans, and this is very clear. There is no Baghdadi, there is no Khilafah. And where is Baghdadi? Why he didn't kill till now? Where he is now? He starts to speak about Turkey.
I think you might be undermining the Muslim Brotherhood's case here by claiming that ISIS is created.
If you like these viewpoints, wait till you hear their ones about the Jews. Those are extra nice.
Okay, I mean, this idea that ISIS was created by the Americans, just before I put this away, you don't genuinely believe this, do you? Sorry? You don't genuinely believe that Daesh was created by the Americans? You believe that?
Believe that, of course I believe. I believe that ISIS is made by Americans.
Okay.
100%.
Okay, this conversation took quite a twist here. Now, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to try and bring it back on point here, because now I want to get back into the issue of the actual Ikhwan, right?
Okay.
Where you are right now.
Okay.
So when you hear Matthew Brodsky say that you guys want to bring about Sharia and you want to bring about Khilafah, they're essentially saying that when you get into the democratic process, you want to use democracy as a ladder.
Why?
To get to power and then kick it away. And then you don't want democracy.
Who said that?
Well, that's what they felt in Egypt, right? Didn't they? That's what they felt in Algeria in the 1990s.
We spend in power less than 1 year.
Right.
So in this 1 year, you feel, or someone feels, that we are jumping over democracy and goes to anything else? I don't understand, and I don't recognize how people think about this.
Is the Brotherhood in support of democracy?
Why we entered all the elections in Egypt and other countries if we are against democracy? Why?
Right. Daniel Benjamin, how broad does this go? I want to try to understand this from the perspective of when the White House wants to do this designation, are they thinking of those who are also somewhat vestigially connected to the Brotherhood? When you think of Ennahda in Tunisia, when you think of even President Erdogan doing the Rabaa sign, right, in solidarity with 1,000 people that were killed in Egypt, is that in the minds of the Trump administration when they're thinking of listing the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization?
I wish I could tell you what is in the mind of the Trump administration, because its actions on this issue have been mysterious and often incoherent. The State Department, my former bureau, looked at this issue of designation of the Muslim Brotherhood in 2017 and decided that it was not legally feasible. What is being pursued right now has not been made clear. It would be astonishing if the administration pursued a designation that would include in some way Ennahda in Tunisia, which has been a strong supporter of the Tunisian revolution and of the democratic institutions in Tunisia. It would be astonishing if it included the Moroccan chapter, which has been centrally involved in the government, and a member has even been the prime minister. It would be a real surprise if it went after the Jordanian Brotherhood, which has been the loyal opposition in the Jordanian parliament. So my guess is that it is focused primarily on Egypt. And my guess also is that this is felt to be a strong enough favor to President Sisi, as well as to the Saudis and the Emiratis, who have been pushing for this kind of designation.
Matthew Brodsky, is this Egypt only? Because as we heard from Daniel Benjamin, I mean, a political party like Ennahda in Tunisia has quite impeccable democratic credentials, right, as he's mentioned. Surely the Trump administration is not going after them, or is it purely Egypt-focused? What do you think?
I don't think it's Egypt-focused. I think it certainly applies there, but it's also the fact that countries like Qatar use the Muslim Brotherhood and its various chapters to undermine its neighbors, and that is a problem for America's allies, especially those allies who act more like allies, not the ones like Qatar who backstab the United States as often as they get a chance to. So I think when it comes to, though, what's actually happening, look, the fact is, I think President Trump understands, first of all, he wanted to get this passed in the first few months when he came into office, but that ended up getting sidetracked for a number of reasons. That's number one. Number two, I think he's aware that through this process, in the end, the whole Muslim Brotherhood may very well not end up being designated. However, specific nodes that are not currently being designated, like one that's in Libya, and there are several others now that need to be designated, they will end up being designated as we gather that type of evidence. I think he's well aware of it, and it becomes a political cudgel.
How do we take this seriously when the Trump administration is trying to project itself as an administration that is serious about radical Islam, an administration that is serious about bad ideas being spread in the name of Islam in the region, when its key ally in the region, Saudi Arabia, just last week beheaded 36 people, crucified one guy for good measure, and they're the chief exponent of Wahhabi Islam in the region? Nothing for them. Do you understand why it's difficult for people to take the sincerity of the administration seriously.
I know, but if we want to get into looking at all the Middle East and what each country does,
well, we were talking about the
Turkey
Brotherhood,
has clean
right?
hands by any stretch of the imagination.
You said the Brotherhood wants
a
a caliphate. You said the Brotherhood wants a caliphate. They want to spread Sharia. I'm giving you an example of a country that beheaded 36 people, crucified somebody, as I said, put his head on a pike for good measure for being a protester, right? And spreads Wahhabi Islam.
Right, and Turkey and Hamas, and Qatar.
So
both
your answer is
support
Turkey and
Hamas
Qatar.
the Muslim
Okay.
Brotherhood.
Okay, so
and
your
they
answer
just
is
got
Turkey and
done
Qatar.
launching a bunch of rockets at
Just
Jews
deflect,
because that's what they want to do.
Okay, let's just
kill
deflect
Jews.
it. Okay, don't address the Saudi
so that
question.
part's kind of less good of a conversation.
Okay, so let's just not address it and mention other countries.
You were starting to ask a different question, I think.
Okay, Daniel Benjamin, come in.
No, I'd say Mr. Brodsky is completely off base when he suggests that Qatar has stabbed us in the back. Qatar is the host of the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, and it's been a superb ally, and I don't know what he's talking about. I also don't know what he's talking about when he says that the Muslim Brotherhood is essentially supporting terrorist groups around the region. The Muslim Brotherhood has been in a feud for decades with Ayman al-Zawahiri and with al-Qaeda, and the reason that it is in that feud is because it has forsworn violence and because it has advocated democratic elections. And the democratic elections are precisely what General Sisi, President Sisi fears, and what the Saudis and the Emiratis find objectionable about the Brotherhood. One can ask the question about whether the Brotherhood is sincere about having more than one election. And I think that that is a real issue, and I carry no brief for a group that is often vitriolically anti-Western. But it is simply wrong to say that they have been supporting jihadist groups like al-Qaeda, like ISIS, or that their agenda is fundamentally similar. That is just not grounded in fact.
Ashraf Abdelghaffar, what are you going to do now if this passes?
We will continue as we are. Nothing will happen.
Considering that there might be a lot of restrictions financially and otherwise if this gets enacted.
Listen, this is a very wrong way. Why? Because we go through democracy, and we entered election, parliamentary election and presidential election, and we got a president, we got a parliament, and after that, someone coming, and he was in a contact with the Minister of Defense in America for a long time in order to prepare for this coup. The coup happened, and Abdel Fattah al-Sisi killed thousands of people, and now he is jailed more than 60,000 of people. And there is women. The American part, and I'm not saying about all the American or the people who support Donald Trump. This is with the American principles, the human rights to finish human rights.
Which makes my question more important. What are you going to do now? You tried democracy. Sisi overturned your democracy. You've been trying to play the democratic game openly and transparently, and Trump still wants to list you as a terrorist organization. So what are you going to do?
Okay, he consider whatever he wants because he is not the God. Donald Trump is a person, and he's doing a lot of problems all over the world. And I think Donald Trump will take the world to the third World War like Hitler. I put a tweet since 3 or 4 days. I said ISIS means Sisi, SISI means Trump. That's it.
Okay.
Now in Venezuela, in Iran, in Turkey, in Yemen, he's very happy about what's happening in people in Yemen. He's supporting Haftar, and after that he's supporting Sisi. Okay.
But
Why
and this
we
is going
trust
beyond
him?
the remit of this discussion.
Why we trust him, or why we accept even his decisions or order? Because he's in power. Okay.
Certainly, I mean, he's probably the most powerful person on
And
on
even,
Earth right
let me tell you something. Maybe this is the first time that the American organization are not in the same way. He has a problem with the Congress. He has a problem with Mueller. He has a problem here and a problem there.
And this is, and as was mentioned by the other guests, this has to go to Congress, and we'll have to see what happens with that. Listen, gentlemen, I have to move on. But it's been an interesting discussion. Ashraf Abdelghaffar, Matthew Brodsky, and Daniel Benjamin. Thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers.